to another series of Medicare Monday. Um, we thank you for joining us again today as we look at some of the Medicare Part D cost. Last week we went through some simplification of some of the Part A, Part B cost, and over the month in October, and this is like the fifth month in October. I was looking back on the calendar today, and I was like, "Is this our fourth episode?" And I was like, it's our fifth one. But then I looked on the calendar and recognized there were 5 Mondays in October this year. So if you have been joining us over this month, we want to welcome you again to Medicare Mondays. If today is your first time joining us, we will also want to welcome you to Medicare Mondays, the fifth series in this episode. We will recommend that if you haven't joined us over the past month, there are a series of videos on the Hills Academy YouTube page, the Hills Academy LinkedIn, and also on Facebook, and also the Health with Solutions um, Facebook, and also the YouTube, right, Ruthlyn?
At our Health with Solutions and Health with Concierge Facebook
That's your favorite
pages and
pages.
link and LinkedIn.
Okay. So please, thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate you. You could have done thousands of things in this hour, but you chose to be here with us today, and we appreciate you. If you want to share with a friend, no, you want to do that, right? Share with a friend, like, subscribe, do all the good things that you do, and we appreciate you joining us so that other people can have the benefits of what we've been doing over the past month. This month, October, has been the health literacy month in our country, and there's the last one of this month. And this is not the last. There's the last week, but not the last one. The last one for this month will be next week, where we will touch on. Um, you want to stay till the end so that we tell you what's coming next week. But thank you, Ruthlyn, for joining us. So once again, we appreciate your time, we appreciate your expertise, and we appreciate all the knowledge that you share with us. You've shared with us, and you continue to share with us. I am your host, tutor Prince Baawuah, and today this is just a recap of some of the things that we've covered over the past month. Week one, we look at the Medicare pathways, the traditional Medicare pathway, the Medicare Advantage pathway, and the parts and making selection. Week two, we look at the enrollment periods, and I always go back and emphasize that if somebody tells you that Medicare enrollment period, you want to ask which one, because we learned that there is initial, Medicare, general, special, annual, open, the whole bunch of them. So you want to ask that question so that the person better explains things to you. If the person doesn't know, you want to quickly shoot that person. You want to share this series to the person so that person can learn as well, and you'll explain to the person too. So that was what we covered in week number two. Week number three, we went through annual enrollment periods. We looked at the ANOC, the annual enrollment period notice, and selecting a plan, because we were in the annual enrollment period as we got to week number three, and looked at some of the things as you make a choice to your health plan, your Medicare health plan during this annual enrollment period. You consider your need, your current coverage, your providers, medication pharmacy network, and other things. Watch the video and you see all the things that we covered in that. Today is week number uh last week, that was week number four. We looked at Medicare cost. And today I think maybe the slides are, let me see. Yeah, today we are going to Medicare prescription drug coverage phases in Part D. So, welcome again, and I am Prince Bahua, your host here, and I'll pass it on to Ruthlyn, and you introduce yourself, introduce and share with us what Health with Solution does, and we can take it on from there.
Well, thank you, Prince. Good afternoon. It's been 4 wonderful weeks, or 5 wonderful weeks.
Yeah, that is the fifth one. We know today is going to be wonderful, so you can freely say 5 wonderful weeks.
5 wonderful weeks of going over Medicare and explaining some of the nuances and the issues that folks might come up against when it comes to Medicare. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ruthlyn Noel Joseph. My company is called HealthWiz Solutions, and we like to say we're healthcare and insurance problem solvers. We help handhold the individual as they try to navigate Medicare and make coverage decisions that could affect their healthcare. Um, and so today, as Prince said, we're talking Medicare prescription drug coverage, which I would say, in my experience as a licensed advisor, is one of the most complicated issues when it comes to Medicare that our customers struggle with often in trying to figure out how what they're paying for and how things move through the coverage phases. So this would be a good topic to pretty much close out our series as we wind our way down in this series. So HealthWay Solutions, we're based in New York. We're licensed in four other states: New Jersey, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. We're growing. We continue to build our agent team and having licensed advisors um, in multiple states to be able to handhold. Our model is to handhold the individual through the process, guiding them, helping them to make those decisions that are right for them. Um, I would say, our clientele is mostly older adults, people over the age of 65. My average client is 75 years old. In fact, I just came here from visiting with one of my older clients who is 99. So we're excited that
Wow.
she'll be 100 in a few months and there'll be a big party for her.
Wow. Are we
So
invited to the party, Ruthlyn?
I'm sure you could get an invitation.
Sorry,
So
go ahead.
no, but because of the clientele that we do have, we do take our time and meet with them one on one and really walk them through, each individual through the process, so that they know they're getting they're making the right choices. And then we handhold them as an agency through the claims process, which is big for many individuals. Our clients feel comfortable enough to call us so that we could help them to speak with their insurance carriers and get whatever services and benefits that they need. So we have a team as well supporting our agent team to be able to handhold our clients through the process. So happy to be here. Looking forward to today's program.
Thank you so much, Ruthlyn, and everyone, to our viewers. If this is the first time you're joining us, or even if you've been here, you know how we do things. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put the questions in the chat box, either on YouTube, either on Facebook, either on LinkedIn, and we will get all of them here, and we will do our very best to answer your questions. So please don't wait till the end. If you want to wait to the end, that is good as well. But as we go through, if there are any questions that come to mind, please do not hesitate to put it in there, and we will gladly work on the question and try to answer it as much for you as possible. So we are in part D, and Ruthlyn, for part D, does it fall into any of the pathways? Like, just trying to go back into some of the pathways, things that we've been discussing.
Right.
That'll be the first question before I go through the opportunity and things. One
Well,
thing.
and yes, in a sense, it does, but it falls into both pathways,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because there is a standalone option when it comes to Part D for people who have original Medicare and just have um, hospital coverage, or Part B, which is medical insurance. Then they still need a separate prescription drug plan. However, for folks, from the majority of folks with Medicare Advantage, which is your Part C plan, which is pathway number two, um, the Part D drug coverage benefits is included in those Medicare Advantage plans. But yes, so it's always there.
Okay, thank you so much. And we'll go through the opportunities that we have, at least for this session. And we'll always want to keep this um the annual enrollment period, which we've covered at the forefront of our mind because we are in, right, we are
Mm-hmm.
in, we discussed this, and it's still ongoing. And the purpose of what we are doing is that during this phase that individuals can make changes to their plan, they are empowered with such a knowledge and empowered with resources like Ruthlyn, like myself, resources that can help or navigate people, educate, so that you are empowered to also navigate and work with the professionals. At Hills Academy, our goal is to accelerate health equity through health literacy, and with
Mm-hmm.
Ruthlyn being solutions and health insurance problem solvers, we are working together to make sure that your problems in this period is solved. Um, so the annual enrollment period, as a reminder again, is for planned enrollees, people who are still in who have Medicare coverages. If this is your first time you get into Medicare, I learned from Ruthlyn that it is your initial enrollment period. I always get this. So it is for you to reevaluate your coverage, make changes, and it is from October 15th through December 7th. So you have the privilege to do that now. The opportunity, again, you go to CMS website, all these information, and I think that thus Medicare information infomercials are all over the place for people to informing beneficiaries that this is the time that you can make changes to your enrollment. And um, on the part D, I was reading this research article that was published in 2018, and it says patient experiences in selecting a Medicare Part D prescription drug plan. And the abstract is here. The conclusion says, although older adults will likely benefit from greater assistance in choosing Medicare Part D prescription drug plans, more research, and I'm going to emphasize, says more research is necessary to understand how decision making is made in context. And then it talks in, I have a quote here that says, although older adults would likely benefit from greater assistance in choosing Medicare Part D prescription drug plans, more research is necessary, which is what I quoted here. There is one thing I want to read, says that just a gist of the research, and it goes like, the elderly participants in the study expressed several concerns regarding Medicare Part D plans. They found the process of selecting a plan to be overwhelmingly confusing and difficult and frustrating, likening it to navigating the tax code. Wow. They also felt that there were too many options and too much paperwork to be done to sift through. The complexity of the process was particularly challenging given their age, as they express a need for things to become less confusing as they get older. Once they had selected a plan, they are reluctant to reevaluate or change it
Hmm.
due to the difficulty and complexity in the selection process. And as I was reading through and understanding this, it's like, this is what we are doing, and it is a great opportunity. And we are thankful to have Ruthlyn by our side to help us to understand some of these areas. And there was also another article um, published in 2013, October 17th. So it's like a week ago, October 17th, or 2 weeks. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
man, on today's the 30th. So about 2 weeks ago. So on the Kaiser Family Foundation, and it goes through Part D, and it has this chart here as I was going through it, like navigating through this, and for 2024, this and that. And I was like, all right, Ruthlyn is here. She's gonna take us through these kind of things and make it easy and simplify for us. So, Ruthlyn, this is a great opportunity for us to learn from you. And with that, I'm gonna pass it on to you for Medicare Part D. Take us through things.
Okay. And Prince, I think you've hit on the nail on the head, which is, in the study that so many older adults are struggling to figure out what their costs are with Part D, right?
Mhm.
And it's a common problem that I hear, and oftentimes, I would hear my customers come to me and they would call and be like, I was paying $50 last month, and now my cost is 200. I don't understand why it went up. And I was like, remember we had that conversation about the coverage phases and the different pieces of that. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But you don't know it, you don't see it until you're actually in
Actually,
it to see
mhm,
how the impact is going to be on the different coverage pages,
mm.
phases. So, alrighty. So let's go into part D. So part D, ladies and gentlemen, have four coverage phases, right? And I want you to take note. We're going to go through each of those individually, but I'm just going to mention the four phases right now because they do they your the amount you pay will differ. The amount you pay for medication will differ based on what coverage phase you're in. So the
S-
go
uh,
ahead.
Just so part D, I think one way people can remember D is for drugs,
D
right?
is for drugs. It's
Yeah.
prescription drug plan. It's Medicare prescription drug plan. That's what it is. There are individuals may have either, as we mentioned before, a standalone plan. So you're just having a Part D plan, which is insurance covered by an insurance company for medication.
Okay.
That's the best way to put it, right? So it's insurance company that's contracted with Medicare to supply Medicare enrollees or beneficiaries with their prescription drugs.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, so the first phase of Part D
Yeah, me too.
is the deductible plan. That's the first phase. Let me mention all four first, and then I'm going to come back and kind of explain what each one is and what how to navigate each section. So the phase one, the deductible phase, it is what it is. It's a deductible. It's money that you pay up front. The second phase is called the initial coverage phase. The third phase that everyone hears about often is called the coverage gap phase or the
Mm.
donut hole. Although we no longer have the donut hole, but it's called the coverage gap phase. And then the fourth phase in that cycle is catastrophic coverage phase. All right. So now that I mentioned all four, let's take the first phase, the deductible phase.
So, Ruthlyn, just
Mhm.
uh, within the part D itself, there are four different phases
Four
of.
different phases or
Okay.
stages. Some
All
people call it
stages in it.
stages,
Okay.
right? Because you're
Okay.
going from, think of it as as a I want to say a cycle, but I don't want to say a cycle. Think of it as you're going a climbing steps,
Okay.
right? And you have those. So each step, so four steps, and each step is a phase.
And is a phase because of your out of pocket costs that
Correct.
you are,
Well,
or is a part beyond that?
yes, and it's adding up to a certain amount that you would pay fully out of pocket if you get to that higher level.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
the best way to put it.
Okay. Cool. All right.
All right.
Please go ahead.
And let me talk a little bit before even phases because when you deal with Part D phases, you may have a premium. So if you have a standalone Part D drug plan, you're paying for that plan separately. It's not if you're in original Medicare, you may or may not have a premium for Part A. You will have a premium for Part B, and you will also have a premium separately for Part D. So that's the first thing to remember. It has its own premium that you would pay monthly.
Okay.
Hmm.
Let me refresh. So the part A, part B premium and cost that we talked about last week is different from this.
It's different from this. That's why
Okay.
we kept Part D separate.
Okay. Okay.
Right? So
Okay.
Part A and Part B costs only it deals with your medical, deals with your hospital, the premiums that you would pay for each of those plans. You have those premiums separately. You put Part D on top of that.
Okay. Okay. One thing that I forgot, but I want to also remind our viewers that it's also this is also being streamed on our friends Otaiwa's channel. So please, if you're watching on YouTube, he's been streaming it for the past 3 weeks, and we appreciate him for getting this out to many much more audience for us too. So please go ahead, Ruthlyn.
No, okay. No, no, no. I appreciate that as well. Love to meet him one day. All right. So in the deductible phase, so what you're going to see on your plans, and you may or may not see it, is that so you pay your premium, and the first phase you're going to have to get through is what's called the deductible phase. And in that phase, you're going to pay 100% of the cost of prescriptions up to, for 2024, up to $545 out of pocket. So that's that first phase. It does not mean that your plan is going to have a 545 out of pocket limit. It just means that in that first phase, you may have that 545, or you might have a plan that have a $0 deductible, and in which case you're going to skip this coverage phase. And so I think the first phase, when folks have different deductibles, and someone will say to me, Prince, oh, but my friend, only we're on the same medication, but my friend is paying uh, $20 for her meds, and I'm paying $75 for the same medication at the same pharmacy. Oftentimes, the individuals have different deductibles, right? But in that first phase, you're paying 100% of the cost,
Okay.
up to 545.
Up to 545. But then this is regardless of like for all the part D plans, any of them that you select, you're paying 545 out of pocket or
Out of pocket.
okay.
But I want to reiterate that it doesn't have to be 545, because what you will see on many carriers' plans is that some generic drugs does not trigger the deductible.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
you're on a low maintenance drug, for example, let's say someone is on metformin, those are relatively lower cost,
Mm-hmm.
as an example, where the individual is paying probably $1. So those are usually on a generic tier, so a tier one tier.
Mm-hmm.
So that individual might have a deductible of $545 on their plan, but the cost of that medication out of pocket is so low that they're
You'll never
not
get
even
there.
triggering the deductible.
You'll never get there. Okay.
Right,
Okay. Okay.
right,
Okay.
right. All right. So that's the first phase, is the deductible phase. Once you've spent $545, you go into what's now called the initial coverage phase. So that is phase two, right? So 545, you already spent up to that if you have that on your plan. Then you start the initial coverage phase. In that phase, the individual will either pay Prince a copay for the medication,
Mm-hmm.
or a percentage of the cost, which is called a co-insurance,
Insurance. Okay.
right?
Okay.
And now, for the vast majority of folks on Medicare, they will be stuck in that coverage phase for the year, because you've spent 545, and now to get out of the initial coverage phase, you have to spend $5,030 in out of pocket costs for next. That's for 2024,
Huh.
right? Because we're looking at 24
Yeah.
numbers here. 2023 is a little different, but we're talking 24. So in 2024, to get out of the initial coverage phase, the individual would have spent $5,030 in out of pocket expenses for their prescription medications.
Okay. Okay. So how what effect if someone will pay a co-pay or a co-insurance here? Is
Right.
it by dependent on the plan?
So it's so not so much the plan, but more like the tiers.
Okay.
So in Medicare plans, you will see drug tiers. Tier one is often generic drugs. Tier two, tier three, tier four. Those are the four primary ones. We discussed those a few weeks back.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might see tier five or tier six on some of the plans, right? But
Okay.
the tiers, so usually the lower tiers, so let's say like a tier one, the often you'll see a copay. So $1, $2, $5. Tier 2, the next level up, you might see $10,
For
right?
copay
For
or
copays, for
okay, okay,
copays. Copays are always a dollar amount,
dollar
right?
amount. Yep.
And then when you get to tier 3 or tier 4, or not tier 6, I'll explain tier 6 again. But if you get to tier 3 or tier 4, you might see a percentage of the cost, 30%, 40%, right? Tier
Mhm.
4 is often specialty medication. So those are your higher
Okay,
price medication.
okay,
Tier 3 is more of your branded medication. Tier
okay.
1, more generic and
Right.
commonly used meds. Tier 6, what the carriers have been doing with the tier 6 drugs is that they put some of the more commonly used medications for Medicare beneficiaries on a tier 6. So even though the tier is higher, the copays are not necessarily higher.
Okay.
But if we stick with the standard four tiers, one, two, three, and four,
Mhm.
as you go up in from generic to brand to specialty medications, the costs are going to go up. So one of the things that individuals want to do in these when they're taking the medications is that ask your doctor if the prescription that's given to you could be filled with a generic medication because
Medicare.
you're going to pay less.
Yeah, because and then if it's a copay mostly, then you know
Correct.
the amount that
Correct.
as opposed to the percentage that
Right.
then
Right.
okay, all right,
Right. And
okay,
so, as you're thinking about your medications that you're on, and you're going through the phases, clearly, if someone has a lot more specialty medications, a
hmm
lot more branded medications, and branded meaning, brand medications, they will be paying a lot more because their out of pockets for the plans are going to be higher,
higher, yeah, and
right?
yeah, and then if it's a percentage, then
As you
it
never know what you're going to pay per se,
yeah,
right?
okay,
But at least you know that you have to pay 5,000 $5,030 out of pocket to get out of the coverage phase. So that's why I say the majority of folks is a large number to get to are not spending. There are lots of folks that's in, I mean, many of my clients actually have 10, 15 medications
hmm
that they're taking. So, copays here, copays there, but they're still not getting to the end
get
of
into
the
that.
coverage phase.
And the I don't know if you mentioned it, but I want to emphasize like that this 5,030, does it include what one paid during phase one or this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay,
Right.
okay,
So it's in addition to what you've already paid in the deductible.
okay, okay.
Right.
Awesome, awesome.
Okay. All right. So deductible, we go to the initial coverage phase. You've spent out. You're gonna see your bills in that initial coverage phase being, for your meds, maybe you're paying $40 a month for a maintenance med that you're taking, or $2 when you go to your special pharmacy, or no payment whatsoever because you're on a very low cost
Medication.
drug and there is a $0 cost for the customer out of pocket, that you're paying for your medication. So you go pick up your pharmacy and you have no copays from your pharmacy, right? So you're stuck for most people here for the rest of the year. But
Okay,
for those people who do kind of have lots of higher costing drugs, some of the drugs are not on the lower tier, or they cannot take medications that on the lower tier, or it's just not offered, then they might have what you're calling phase three, where they get into what's called the coverage gap phase.
okay. Tell us more about this phase.
Okay, so this is the phase that has, I think, of everything that had the most press because of the donut hole that it was called before. This was the donut hole, and you would see the donuts with the hole in it because there was a real coverage gap before where individuals will get in and you would be stuck there paying 100% of the cost of the medication.
Hmm,
That's no more. Okay, so that where the individual was paying 100% of the cost in the donut hole, that went away. But what the individual now pays once they've spent the 5,030. So anything above that now, they're in the donut hole, they're in the coverage gap phase. What you're going to pay as an individual is that you're going to pay 25% of the cost. So now you have a co-insurance,
Hmm.
not a copay, but a co-insurance when you enter the coverage gap, right? And so all of a sudden, you would find that individuals who were paying $40, Prince, all of a sudden their bill might be $150. Same medication, nothing has changed, but the only thing that changed for them is that they've entered the
Entering a
coverage
different
gap,
phase.
right? But
Yeah.
that's where folks get a little confused because now you're balancing your pocketbooks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or your wallets. And this is a bigger dip, a bigger bite into your social security payments that you're getting to pay for prescription drugs,
Hmm.
right? Because you've entered the coverage gap phase. Now, individuals get for 2024, individuals, so think of the 5,000 where we were, so
Five thousand. Yep.
$5,030 in the initial coverage phase,
I'll go
and
back.
individuals will pay eight up to $8,000 now. Once they've spent up to $8,000, they will get out of the coverage gap phase. So you got to spend between 5,030 and $8,000, and once you have these costs in there, you will be in the coverage gap phase.
Hmm. And all these are additive, right? Additive. So
So
from your
exactly,
deductible,
exactly.
your initial coverage area, and then the coverage gap to being 25. So for the same thing that you're doing, I think probably here you're asking your physician even much more. Just thinking of from
Right,
a patient, what are some
right.
strategies thinking through? And one has to probably, I'm just thinking on top of my
Hmm.
head,
I
you
want
have
you
to
to think on this.
know, yeah, from last year, and this is when we were talking, I
Mhm.
think week two, knowing your health needs and what things have changed.
Right.
Just based on that, you are maybe likely to know, or talking to your providers, know what are potential medications that you're going to take so
Hmm.
that you can plan ahead during the year as possible, knowing, all right, if this is the case, then this is the place I'm likely to get. I may
Right.
likely to get to the coverage gap area, or I may likely to not get there. And
Hmm.
then one can better plan and anticipate these things as such. Okay.
Correct. And
Okay.
I'm going to give some strategies what folks do and what
That
we
would be
use
really
with folks.
appreciated as always.
Um, but this is high. This is the highest we've been to get out of the coverage phase because in 2023 the limit is 7,400. Right?
Okay.
We would get to 7,400, and the individual, would go into the catastrophic phase. But this year we're almost $600 more if I'm doing my math.
Yep.
Um, yeah, if I'm doing my math, individuals in 2024 will pay $600 more to get out of the coverage phase. So we expect now that we are going to see more customers, calling about, the issues that they're dealing with now inside of the coverage gap phase. So if you're on many maintenance medications, it is so important to really have a strategy for how you will deal with when you get to the coverage phase, what you need to do. So we'll
Mm,
talk a little bit about some of the strategies we use um, with our customers. The first being is that we really always have to check their medications. All
yeah.
right. So, what all of this is building up to, Prince, is what Medicare calls your true out of pocket cost. And it's what you're spending for your drug costs, right?
Mhm.
Um, and what you're spending for your drug costs includes, it does not count your premiums, but it does include a number of things that you're paying for: your co-pays, your co-insurance, your deductibles. All of those things get added into here to build you up to $8,000 in your out of pocket.
This is excluding premium. And I think you said that, and I want to
Excluding
emphasize this
premium.
is excluding premium. Yeah.
Premium is not included. So premium is on top of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Yes. But all of the money that you're pulling out of extra money that you're pulling out of
Yeah.
your pockets when you go fill your medications at the pharmacy, is adding up towards your true out of pocket cost. And they're, they've also added in the cost of the drug. So the money in the coverage gap phase, before you were paying 100%, now you as a consumer, you're paying
5%.
25%. So I'm guessing folks are wondering, well, who's paying the extra 75%?
Okay.
Right? Because there is still 100% of the cost of the drug. It's just telling you that you, as a consumer, your share of the cost is 25%. So
Hmm.
in the coverage gap phase, while the customer is paying 25%, drug manufacturers, they're contributing a portion. Insurance companies are contributing a portion in there to add up to the extra 75%,
Okay.
right? But for the consumer, and since we're focused on a consumer
Yeah.
audience,
Yeah.
we're only looking at the consumer share. So the consumer share, if the price is $100, the customer pays $25. Everyone else, manufacturers, insurance companies, pay the difference of the $75. So we're only focused here because we're talking to a consumer audience about what the consumer pays,
Pace. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So someone else is paying the rest of it, but it all gets added into the true out of pocket cost that brings up to that $8,000,
8,000. Okay.
right?
Okay.
Okay, but for the consumer side of things, the consumer pays their 25%, and we get to a point where we enter once you've paid out $8,000 in out of pocket expenses for medications. You get to what's called a catastrophic coverage phase. That is phase four,
Let me get there.
right? That is phase four. Um, and the biggest difference from 2023 to 2024 is that once a consumer enters the coverage phase in 2024, they will have no more co-pays, co-insurance to pay. And
Okay.
that's the difference. Before there would have been a 5% or a 3.15, but a dollar copay, a small dollar copay when they enter catastrophic.
Hmm.
But for 2024, the cost goes away. But it's still $8,000 to think in drug costs. It's still a huge number for individuals to think about. But once someone has spent $8,000, and let me repeat it, once you as a consumer has spent $8,000 in prescription drug costs out of pocket, you will no longer have any copays to pay for the rest of the year.
And then every year it's
It resets
okay.
every January 1st. It resets, right?
Okay. Okay.
So so now for some customers and so some individuals, you could do some predictive modeling.
Okay.
If they're on high maintenance drugs, they may actually zoom right through the coverage gap and get to that catastrophic coverage phase in March, April,
Hmm.
earlier on in the year, right? And for those who takes more generics, low cost maintenance drugs, not a lot of medications, they might be stuck in the deductible or get to the initial coverage phase and stuck there for the rest of the year. So that's why when they say not everybody pays the same thing, that's because not everybody is in the
At the
same
same.
position at the same time. It varies and it differs based on what kind of medications the individuals are taking,
Yeah.
right?
It it does make sense to me. I'm just thinking through like because all the phases to get to 8,000 and know
Right,
when it all boils down to knowing
right,
what is your current health needs, what are
correct,
medications you're on, or what have changed,
right,
and then how likely one is likely to get to which phase, uh,
correct.
and then making all those choices. And no wonder the article talks about the challenges that
To try and
or
figure it
the
out.
challenges or the opportunities that are there to figure this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
So as you work with consumers, and we are here on the consumer side, as you work with consumers, what are some strategies helping
Right.
people to navigate
So,
through all these and keep track of them?
so absolutely. So the first thing when someone meets with me, we ask them for their prescription list, right? Because when we're helping someone to figure out, we need to give them some idea as to how much they may pay. It's not a perfect science,
Hmm.
but we could drill it down a little bit so they have a sense as to what they're going to pay out of pocket for prescription medications.
Okay.
And the way to do this is to get the medications and run it against the formularies that each carrier set out.
We have.
And we have the system and the tools to be able to collect the medications, and we run it across the formularies, the different formularies for each of the carrier that we carry, to make sure that the medication is covered appropriately. Because what folks will find is that you might get your medication from carrier A, but carrier A have your drug on a different tier than carrier B.
Oh.
Right? Same medication,
Oh.
right? So something like I don't want to say a metformin, but it's in my head. But let's say your high blood pressure, because I have a lot of clients with high blood pressure. So your
Oh,
high blood pressure medication for carrier A, it might be a tier one medication. So and a tier one, you might have no cost.
yeah.
But for carrier B, it's on a tier two, so you might have $10 to pay because it's on a tier two. And for another carrier, that same medication might be a tier six because they have it there as common meds that for their folks. So every carrier is different. So we want to look across carriers, Part D plans, to make sure that the individual is getting the plan with the most affordable rates for them. And the only way to do that is to check the medication.
And I know we are in the enrollment period now.
Mhm.
So does can the same career that one may have, and based on the research that we looked at earlier, where people are beneficiaries are saying, hey, this is complex, I will just keep what I have. Can the same career change a tier
Absolutely. Yes.
within different years? So what you
Yes.
thought was tier one in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years now is like a whole different tier for you.
These things are negotiated every single year,
Okay.
right? Drugs move around. You know, you have there are medications that's not currently covered by Part D that will be covered next year. You know, like newer meds coming in,
Mhm.
older meds being taken out because they're no longer in use or no longer active. So there are lots of movements happening, right? Companies are changing. They're not offering deals. That there's a whole bunch of other things that goes on the back end that's beyond my pay grade, so
Mhm.
to speak, right? But so for an individual consumer, and mind you, we spoke about the annual notice of change
Okay.
and how important it is because everyone is going to get this notice. And in this notice, they're going to tell you that your Part D drugs, the the deductible amount is going up or it's going down depending on what that carrier negotiated or kind of build out for their plan. So individuals need to check, and I would highly recommend that consumers run their formularies every single year because the cost you paid this year in 2023 might be vastly different in 2024. So you always want to make sure. And even if you choose to stay with the carrier, stay with the carrier,
You want
but
to,
at least check to make sure that you don't have any surprises in the new year,
huh?
right? So
Yeah.
right now, we're Prince. We are reviewing all of the medications for all of our current clients. And when we're and at the same time we're working with newer clients and doing the same thing for
Same
them.
for them. Yeah.
Because we always have to review the medications. If it's one time you're doing this, you do it in open enrollment for your so you know that when you go to 2020, the next
Or
year, the next
mhm.
plan year,
Yeah.
that your coverage for your medications, you have a sense of where your medications fall.
And this is done, and I'm just thinking the open enrollment period. annual open enrollment period is when this is done, or can it be done before, or people have some preparatory things that if you do
Well,
it over and over for several years, at least I think you probably have an idea
right.
what you need.
You have an idea of what you need, but this is the time to do it. And the reason being
Okay.
is that this is when the 2024 numbers come out,
Okay.
right? So it's going to come out in late September. So you know that you're comparing against what next year is going to
It's gonna
be.
be okay.
So this is the time to do it. This is the time to review. I can't reiterate enough. Don't just assume that, oh, I was paying nothing last
Last
year.
or this
Um,
year. So
so I still have access to my medication next year,
uh
or I still have access this year. I'm doing this year, so I'm still gonna have access. You can't assume when it comes to Part D, and
hmm.
that's where so many people get into trouble, is that they don't review the medications, they don't work with an agent, or go on to Medicare.gov and review the medications there, but review it. But where folks get into trouble is that they review the medication, or they have a plan, but they didn't review it, and then they get the surprise bill in January, in
Hmm.
February, because that's usually when I get calls from new clients saying that, oh, I my plan raised my price,
Hmm.
right? But that review could have been done. That individual could have known that, at least be told that there were some changes happening with the plan.
Yeah, this really brings to me because I work a lot with data, and I think there is a saying, I don't know who said it. Otherwise, I would never attribute it. But uh, a saying in data, working with data, healthcare data, is that you don't get the data you expect, you get the data you inspect. Pretty much, you don't get the plan you expect, you actually get the plan you inspect.
Right,
Wow. Okay.
right,
Okay.
right,
Wow.
right,
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you
Any other
know,
strategies that you might share? And I know we
um, so
have. Yeah.
I tell my clients too, I say, have a relationship with your doctors, right?
Okay.
So that's one, because for some individuals, when they get to that coverage gap, that medication that they were on, if that cost is coming from, I don't know, let's say $50 to $200 a month, and that's going to become a burden on them financially, you need to be able to go back to your doctors and your prescribers and say, look, doc, um, this is the situation. That medication is costing me way too much out of pocket. Could you prescribe a different medication for me, so that I could fill it at a lower tier? Right. And so I get calls from my clients, and they'll go back to their doctor's offices, and the doctor will give them a list of the medications in that class of drugs,
Drugs.
and they'll come back, and I'll be happy to review that medications for them, right? So
Hmm.
I could review it against the plan that they're on, because at that point in time, for some individuals, we cannot switch plans anymore, right? We don't have as you've learned, a special enrollment period to
Yeah.
be able to switch them. So we're kind of stuck for the year when they're in there. So when they come with the list of medications, we're able to take the plan that they do have right
Okay.
now and run the list of medications in the class that the doctors gave them. And we let them know, okay, based on that, they're already our clients, right?
Okay.
So we say, okay, well, based on what we're seeing here, this medication is covered, this one is not covered by your specific plan. This one is covered on this tier, so this is what it's going to do. So sometimes we have to do some strategizing in the middle of the year, um, to keep in touch. Now, we do serve an older population, and so we tend to not be an agency that goes away from most people once a year. So I usually have conversations with my clients multiple times throughout the year. And part of what I'm looking for them is to see if they're having any troubles filling their medications, and where they are in those coverage gap phases, because then we need to do some strategizing.
Yeah. I really appreciate the like now it's more, not only are you working with you and looking at what plan that works for you as an individual, work for the beneficiary, I mean, now you have to also work with your provider, right? So it's like kind of understanding from the providers, because they are taking care of you. They know the
Right,
class, the prescriptions and the class and all everything and how they can navigate, but they may not necessarily have the time to know everybody's plan
correct,
or
correct,
all the plans that are in the marketplace to be able.
right.
No, I don't mean the marketplace insurance, but the plan there to be able to say, "Oh, based on this, you should." I think
Hmm.
providers are already busy, right? You said something, and I'm thinking that more from an immigrant perspective and several immigrant groups. You can talk to a provider to say, "Hey, provider, may you please change? Can you do that?" I'm just thinking from
So,
the example where,
immigrants,
yeah, sometimes where we come from,
right?
providers, we not that we we don't I don't want to say challenge, but provider say A, you go do A,
And you don't ask
if
questions.
that you don't ask question in that way. But you are saying we can, in America, you can talk to providers and say, "Hey, provide,
You
you
have to learn to talk to providers, but you are right because so many of our immigrant
population
you know customers, they're not very comfortable asking their
asking."
doctors or asking their providers for anything other than what the prescriber provided,
Hmm.
or prescribed to them, right? But so in situations like that, we might give them a list of we do have an advocacy team.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, we're a little differently set up. We have an advocacy team. We have a pharmacist. Um, on as part of our team, we have a couple of pharmacists that we work with who will do a deeper dive and review those medications
Huh.
for those individuals. Because our agent team, we could only say to the customer, this medication is covered by the plan. It's not. We could only talk about the formulary, what we're seeing. We can't give medication advice,
Yes.
right? But a pharmacist could. And so if someone is not comfortable talking with their doctor,
Doctor.
get comfortable talking with your pharmacist, because in many cases your pharmacist could be your advocate. Your
Advocate.
pharmacist could go back to the doctor and say, hey, Dr. X, Miss Jones is in that coverage gap phase. She's complaining that that medication is too much of a problem for her to afford out of pocket. you know we see that based on the because they have access to the
That's
formulary as well,
Larry.
right? We see that if she fill XYZ medication, um that it will cost her a lot less, that's more within her budget. And then the pharmacist could work with the doctor to kind of change the script, modify the script, or do whatever they need to do to get Mrs. Jones the medication that she needs without busting her budget. So get comfortable talking with either of those providers, right? So if not the physician, get comfortable talking with the pharmacist that you go to, your local pharmacist, because they're watching and they know when you enter the coverage gap phase as well too,
Hmm.
because the price changes,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So one or the other, but I know it's always a challenge when it comes with immigrant customers, right? But I also have doctors who works largely with immigrant customers, and the doctors will call our office and say, "Hey, we have a customer. She said you're her agent. Could you let us know which of those medications?" And they will give me the list just like the customer will, and
Mhm.
we'll run it. And we could say, well, based on what we're seeing for this plan, for this member's plan, based on the list that you've given me, these are all the medications. These are the tiers that they're covered under. So it's a team, right? Make they say, build your village,
Yep.
and your village should include your provider, so your doctors, your pharmacists, but it should also include, working as part of that team, your agent,
Mhm.
because that's your insurance expert in that mix that's helping the individuals to navigate. So build your team of experts that's working with you as a consumer, so that if they're working together and they know, they could help mitigate your costs.
As you're talking, something things that just pop in my head. Probably Hills Academy do something on building your healthcare village and see who you need in that healthcare village that one needs to build. Because now, because you're talking to Medicaid, you're talking to medication. Now you're talking about plans. You want to make sure all of them are aligned because it
Right.
affects how much your finances ultimately and affect your health because you get stressed that will also affect your health ultimately and then how
Mhm.
much you service and all these things coming together. So having a solid village, a solid key key partners who are aligned to your health can better serve that. So just as we were talking, there are things popping in my head, things that we could do, like who is your healthcare village or who should be included based on your needs. So thank you so much, Ruthlyn. I know we have only 4 minutes left and we don't have any question on the chat, and I want to pass on if there are any last words. I just recognize a typo here and I'm sorry for that. um, and if there are any last words in terms of Part D, next week is going to be our last Medicare Monday for this series. We take a break and come back. But we will be touching on Part C, a bit on Part C, the Medicare pathway,
Advantage.
Advantage pathway. Uh, and if there are any last things that you want to say, Ruthlyn, but before that, let me quickly go back to the phases and just as a form of repetition that helps
Hmm.
deepen impression. Phase number one today, we covered the deductible phase where you're paying 100% of that up to 455 545, sorry, out of pocket. Phase number two, initial coverage, you either pay a set of copay or co-insurance. If you are just joining us, you may please go back to the video and watch more details to what may potentially cause that after you get 5,030 out of pocket expenses. And then you get to the coverage gap where it's 25% of the cost co-insurance until you hit 8,000. And then the phase number four, which is once you hit 8,000, then you pay zero for brand and generic drugs, where everything else is taken over, which continues to the end of the year. And you want to understand this, you want to understand your coverage, you want to look at your medications, your formulary, work with your provider team, work with Ruthlyn's team and other teams like hers, work with your pharmacist, get your healthcare village together and do this while we are in the initial enrollment period, so that once you get to the next year, you know you are set, or at least you have some form of predictable. You have an idea than getting surprises. I think that is, you may probably not be able to predict everything, but at least you have an idea so that you are not surprised. And Ruthlyn, we appreciate you again. Any last words before
Well, I
we
just
close
want
for
to
the
make
day?
a quick correction because we're in the annual election
Oh,
period, so the annual
annual election.
enrollment period, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that. And any last words before I put
Okay.
on the
I
website
know that
things?
prescription drugs is going to be a challenge. I know the $8,000 is going to seem like a sticker shock
Yeah.
for most people. We
Mhm,
know that not everyone is going to have a deductible phase. Some carriers don't have a deductible, they have a zero deductible plan. So, for you as the individual, take this information as just information, but take the time to review your plan, your specific plan,
mhm,
either going on Medicare.gov or sitting with your agent, your broker, whoever is working with you on Medicare, and review your benefits, review your Part D coverage, and let them explain to you what your costs will be, because everyone will be different. So, what your costs
mhm.
might be for the upcoming year.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And as I said again, you don't get the plan that pulling from what we do with data. You don't get the plan that you expect.
Right.
You get the plan that you inspect. So thank you so much, Ruthlyn. We sincerely appreciate you for your time, for your expertise, for your knowledge, freely sharing. And I would always recommend, if you want to reach out to Ruthlyn, you go to the website www.healthwithsolutions.com. They are problem solvers in the health insurance space. And you can reach out also via email at support@healthwithsolutions.com, or you can reach out to the Hughes Academy, www.thehughesacademy.com, or info@thehughesacademy.com to reach out to me. And also the forms that we send out, all the information we send out, you can quickly reach out to us. But we appreciate you. We know you could have done so many things with your hour, but you spent it with us. You spent it with us, and we appreciate you. Continue to subscribe to our channels, continue to share the information, continue to like and comment and reach out. And we sincerely appreciate you. We are accelerating health equity through health literacy at the Hughes Academy. And Ruthlyn, thank you again, and we appreciate your time always. All right, audience, thank you, and we will catch you same time next week. And we, if you would have missed one, I think you should have missed today. You don't want to miss. You don't want to miss next week. All right, so bye bye for now then.